Hello everyone, welcome in to another tactics tutorial video for FIFA 23. I'm Ash, and today, continuing from a set of videos that I did last year, I want to start our tactics tutorial series again. In this video in particular, I want to talk to you guys how to make a possession tactic, a possession slash Tiki-Taka tactic, whichever you want to call it. It went down really well last year, so I thought let's go again this year and see what new tips we can bring up, as well as talking about the ones that we did also speak about last year. We're going to go through the best formation to use, the best custom tactics, and the best player instructions as well to make the ideal possession system for you. Before we do get into that though, I quickly want to say, if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell to get notifications every time I upload. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. You can find access to great perks on there, such as my tactics package covering every system that we do cover on the channel, giving it ratings and rankings, as well as early access to videos, exclusive tactics videos, Discord server access, fantasy football league access, and a whole lot more. And also check out my video games podcast if you want your fix for all things video games, but we don't talk anything politics like a lot of video games podcasts do these days. Then do go and check that out. The links to that you'll find down below, or you should find a card somewhere up there, I believe. And with that being said, let's get into it. So, first things first, let's talk about the formation. What formation should you be looking to use for a successful possession-based system? Well, obviously we've got the 4-3-3 here, and that's quite a popular one, as it has been throughout the years, and there's a reason for that, but it doesn't just have to be the 4-3-3. Now, theoretically, any formation can work as a possession system, theoretically. But there's a reason why formations like the 4-3-3 and similar varieties have been the popular ones. And that's because, one, in a possession-based system, you are looking to crowd out the midfield. You want numbers in midfield. Now, in a 4-4-2, for example, you can't do that because obviously you've only got two central midfielders, and it's a little bit harder to get that done. Whereas with the 4-3-3, you've obviously got the free midfield and you get closer bodies, and it's easier to have those shorter, quick interchanges. In addition to that, preferably what you're looking for is a system that crowds out every zone. It covers every zonal area of the pitch. So as you can see here, with this 4-3-3, everywhere is covered. Whereas with the 4-4-2, for instance, you don't have those advanced areas covered where a cam would be, and you also don't have the defensive midfielders, which granted you can have with the holding, but you still have that issue of that gaping hole in between the midfielders and the strikers. Whereas with like a 4-3-3, for example, you can do that. Now, it doesn't just have to be a 4-3-3. You could have the 4-2-3-1, for example, or you could have, say, one of these three-back systems, so like the 3-5-2, the 3-4-2-1, the 3-4-1-2, etc. You know, these also work. Obviously, the diamond with the 3-4-3, you know, these also work. Now, it doesn't cover as many zonal areas with the 3-5-2, for example, but providing you've got those fit wingers or wide midfielders, whatever you want to call them, you can still generally do that, and you've obviously crowded out a lot of numbers in midfield that's going to help that, so that can still be successful for you. What you really are looking to avoid is things like the ultra defensive formations such as a 5-4-1. Really try and avoid that, because ultimately, yes, it's going to be easy to play out from the back, but then in the middle third and obviously the attacking third, you're going to find it harder to retain possession, and naturally you are just going to invite pressure onto you. Again, same with things like 4-4-2 and, for example, the 4-2-4, which is a similar variation anyway. You know, the 5-4-1 diamond. Again, you can do it theoretically, but I wouldn't personally advise it. So what about with the custom tactics? Let's talk about this. Starting off defensively, you're looking for one of these three: pressure on heavy touch, press after possession loss, or constant pressure. Now, why is that? If you are a team that values possession, then obviously you need to have the ball. And to have the ball, you have to win the ball. And to win the ball, you have to press. And so as a result, you are naturally, sorry to put it so obviously, looking for one of these free pressing systems. Now, last year I said really you're looking for constant pressure or press after possession loss. This year, I think you can also go with pressure on heavy touch. I think it's more effective this FIFA than it has been in the past. And this is something that can work quite well as well. Avoid both drop back, for obvious reasons, but also balanced. Now, balanced really mixes drop back with pressure on heavy touch. That's generally what it does. So obviously, because you've got that element of that drop back and that more passive play, you want to avoid that. So I would avoid both balance and drop back. You're looking for one of these three. The width doesn't matter so much in a possession system, but obviously naturally you just want that to be fairly narrow and like a low number, just for obviously the natural principles of play. You don't want to leave too many gaps in between each position. The depth, last year we said it needs to be a high line. This year, again, I think you can tweak that. Anything from 50 and above is what you're looking for. You can still have a successful possession-based system with a mid-block, but it needs to be a more active-minded mid-block, not a more passive mid-block, which is going to be like 40 and 30, for example. You want that block to be at least fairly high up, but you can get away with a mid-block as well if you do have a little bit of a worry with regards to balls being played in behind your defence and over the top and being exploited on the pace. You know, we have seen plenty of successful possession-based teams that do play on the front foot that employ a mid block, so you can also get away with having it on 50 and above. Offensively, build up play, obviously slow build up. This one very self-explanatory, so we're not going to go into this too much, but obviously you're going to get players from goalkeeper restarts, for example, dropping into the box, showing for the ball. It's going to enable your players to show for the ball in your own defensive half, and that's what you're going to need, basically. So avoid anything else. For a possession-based system, you're always looking for slow build-up. With chance creation, it doesn't have to be possession. You can also get away with forward runs as well, because part of this system is you don't just want possession for possession's sake. You obviously want some element of penetration. And forward runs are going to allow you to do that because it's going to provide movement. And so with forward runs, it doesn't just have to be a counter-attacking system. You can also have lots of success with that in a possession-based system as well. But one of these two, either possession or forward runs, you'll find it a little bit more kind of stagnant with possession, and you are going to have to utilise the player instructions, which we'll talk about shortly, to make sure that you still have that element of penetration. But it does kind of value the ball more. And, you know, with regards to the FIFA gameplay, it becomes less end-to-endy and less counter-attack heavy than what it would on forward runs. So definitely, I would advise that as well. Your offensive width really should be on the low end, anything below 40, but preferably under 30, where, as you'll see, the description changes and it does become more narrow. You're trying to make sure that the midfield and the centre-backs, etc., in particular, are compact and close together to encourage and enable you to do those kind of short, quick interchanges that are going to really play into your possession-based system. Now, the way you are going to stretch the pitch, and remember you do still need to stretch the pitch, is from both the positioning and the player instructions. For example, you want to make sure you've got wingers. Sometimes in some situations you want to change your fullbacks to wingbacks, and these guys are going to create the width. They are what are going to stretch the play. Same with player instructions as well, which we'll talk about a bit later on. But that is how you're going to get that nice mix between making sure that your midfield is compact enough to enable that possession-based style and approach, and also stretching the opposition. Something we spoke about last year as well, which I think is still something you could do. Think about lowering free kicks from the 4s and the 5s to somewhere like 3 and 2. Because what this does is naturally, you can have less players in the box, but you'll have more players around the set-piece taker. And so as a result, you can then play shorter free kicks more often and have more players around him to then get the game going again. Whereas if you've got free kicks on 4, for example, you're going to have most of your players in the box, and it's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to have less options if you do just kind of play it short and look to just retain possession. So that's something you should also think about tinkering with as well. Let's also talk about the most important player instructions that you are looking for. The first thing is, do consider, if you are playing a fullback system, having one of your fullbacks as an inverted fullback, and the best way to try and replicate this is to have them on stay back while attacking and also have them inverted. I'm also working on a theory that when you do move the fullbacks closer with regards to the positioning, as you'll see here, I've moved him really close to that centre back, that it also helps their position to come and invert a little bit more and come closer to the centre backs. That's still a theory though. I'm still working on that, so do try that out for yourselves and let me know. But do consider having an inverted fullback. It's obviously something that we are seeing more and more often throughout just the entirety of football really, we're seeing more teams, it's more fashionable to have that inverted fullback. It's just going to help you a whole lot more, not only to stop opposition counter-attacks, but also just with the build-up play, because you've not got fullbacks kind of bombing on forward, one of them in a show, and help support not only the centre-backs, but the central midfielders more as well. Another important player instruction is this baby right here. For any defensive midfielder, you can set their positioning freedom to deep line playmaker. Super important if you have a defensive midfielder, which you probably should. This instruction this year has been a real just welcome change. They had it on free roam last year. It didn't work effectively. They have messed about with it for this FIFA, and it works a whole lot better. These guys are going to roam around, find pockets of space, and just enable you to play out from the back more effectively. So this is really a bit of a starter pack more than anything. If I want any sort of possession-based system, I will have a defensive midfielder, and he will be a deep line playmaker. So that is an absolute given. Another thing you also should be looking at with regards to player instructions and the positioning is really to kind of make sure you've got a centre attacking midfielder. So it doesn't just have to be in this 4-3-3 system. It could be the 4-2-3 on wide, which obviously it's already done for you. You could say have the 3-5-2, for example, where we've got that cam, you know, the 3-5-1. Or with regards to the kind of 3-4-3, make sure that they are kind of ram and lamb rather than wingers. And the reason why you want to do this is because you want someone in those advanced areas, and it's very important you do that because that's going to enable you, compared to a flat central midfield 3, which, yes, you can still have successful possession, but it's very hard to create a system, unless it's Ancelotti's Madrid, go and check out that video, where it's going to be really effective. Generally, you want someone in those advanced areas because it's just going to enable build-up to be a whole lot more successful more often. You will absolutely notice the difference, and you'll find that it's far less passive when you don't have a kind of flat central midfield, and instead you've got someone in those advanced areas, and that positioning is much better as well. You can also set them to free roam if you do want them sometimes dropping off, which we'll talk about very shortly. Speaking of free roam, definitely advise you try and get this into your system, whether or not it kind of depends on the position that you want. You can obviously set your wingers to this. You can set your attacking midfielder, your central midfielders to this. You want to try and get this in because it really helps with that fluidity of movement. They're constantly picking up space, and it is just, again, a bit of a starter pack, similar to the deep line playmaker, except it is in those kind of more aggressive attacking areas. They are just more in advanced areas. You don't have to have everyone on it, and remember that if you do have the central attack midfielder on free roam, they are really going to drop off more because they really are given that free license to kind of roam around. So you'll find that they won't be in those advanced areas as much. So if you are going to do it, it's better off being done either with a winger or with the central midfielders. Let's also talk about the attackers as well, the best instructions to them. The best thing to do, or something to note, is that what you don't want really is all three of these guys on getting behind, because what you're going to notice is it's going to form huge gaps between your midfield and your front men. It's going to be very counter-attacking heavy as well, which isn't the most fulfilling to play on FIFA, for me personally anyway. I know a lot of you are the same who watch my videos on a regular basis. You don't want it to be constant counter-attack. So the best way to kind of deal with this is, one, you can have the two wingers on getting behind and the striker on false 9, which is one of my favourite ways to really play a possession-based system. I definitely kind of would advise having that false 9, and then you can get kind of one of the central midfielders to run in beyond him. Or the other way you can do is, if you want your striker on getting behind, instead you can have one of the wingers on either come short, or with the chance creation, you can have them on free roam, and that's going to enable them to kind of, again, give them that license to roam around more rather than kind of penetrating the opposition's defensive line. Instead, they're going to drop off and find pockets of space to show for the ball and get themselves into that space to kind of help spring those attacks. So that's also a really good way to do it as well. It's something we've done in the past with the likes of kind of the Barcelona systems, etc., when Messi was there, and we kind of gave him that free role. Really fun if you can find the right player to do that with. Now, with regards to a possession system, that's really it for the main tips. Now, I got some people asking me in the video last year, kind of what should be players in the box, what should my centre backs be on. remember, that doesn't really matter too much with regards to a possession-based system. I don't need to tell you kind of every single tactical instruction. Some things will just be personal preference. Some things will be down to kind of the formation and the system or the personnel that you have available to you. So they're really the main things that you'll need to know for a possession-based system. Things like, should my winger cut inside or stay wide? You know, that depends on the system. Do you want it like Man City, where the wingers kind of create that width, stay on the touchline and make room for runners in those kind of half spaces? Or do you want it more like Napoli, for instance, who have wingers where they're kind of angling their runs more and looking to support that striker? That's really up to you. But these are, as I say, just the main tips. So with that being said, we're going to round it off there. If you guys think I've missed anything that you think might be important for a possession-based system, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll be really great to hear from you. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications every time I upload. Don't forget to check out my Patreon if you want access to those great perks and rewards, like exclusive tactics videos, behind-the-scenes videos, my tactics package, and a whole lot more. Check out my video games podcast if you want your video games fixed. The links to that are down below. Really enjoying doing that. And with that being said, we are going to round it there. Thank you so much to everyone for watching, and until the next time, I will see you soon.